Hi, are you African and you live in Africa, but you want to study in the United States of America for free, absolutely free, and you do not know where to start or how to start? Then you want to grab a chair and sit down and join me in this series as I walk you through from the start to finish. Hi, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Excellence Henrika Joshua again. And if you have not subscribed, please subscribe and like. Then, if you find what you see here helpful, do share. A lot of people find it helpful. Most people, I don't want to compete with people, so they don't want to share. Please just share. It helps. Trust me. Now, on this particular video, I want to talk to you on how to choose the best program for your goals. Um, and even your budget, and also the best schools, especially if you're considering studying in the United States. So when we talk about graduate programs, they are kind of in two broad categories: the master's and the doctoral program. I'm not saying PhD because there are different types of doctoral programs. The master's program is usually after you're undergrad. You can apply for a master's. You have a master's of science, master's of art, master's of engineering, master's of different things, master's of development engineering, master's of business administration, and so many of the likes. Most master programs are between 1 and 2 years. Um, some are 1 year, some are 3 semesters, which is 1.5 years, some are two. Very rarely will you see a master's program beyond that. Most times, if they're beyond that, maybe it's an executive program or it's a part-time program, so it's taking a longer time. Also, some people come into a master's program that is kind of adjoined with a PhD, so they continue into a PhD program, and so that's longer. But a doctoral program, it's beyond the master's program. When it comes to doctoral programs, you have the PhD, and then you have the professional doctoral programs like the DBA, Doctor in Business Administration, the DRPH, Doctor in Public Health, the DED, Doctor in Education, and the rest of that. The difference between a PhD and most professional doctoral programs is the fact that most times the PhD is more research focused, while um, the professional doctoral program is kind of not as research focused as that. Let me explain further. Like the PhD, when you're coming in, you're trying to answer a particular research question, you're kind of niched. And I'm saying research, when I say research, don't just think the laboratory, because when people think research, they think, oh, I have to work in the lab. What if you're not a science student? You're still going to do the PhD, but it just involves a lot of research. Now, a professional doctoral program is usually quite interdisciplinary. You're also going to be doing some research, but it's not as core as the PhDs. And also in the United States, a typical PhD is about 4 to 6 years, or it could be more, right? But I don't see any that's less than 4 years. And the ones that are usually 4 years are usually, I've noticed that they are usually more applied PhD, where it's kind of like a balance of a PhD and a professional doctoral program, but then they still call it a PhD. But most professional doctoral programs are um, 3 years. Some people do more than that, but usually they want you to be done in 3 years. Um, most professional doctoral programs as well kind of equip you to be leaders, policy, developing policy, implementing, and all of those kind of things. But PhD focus is more research focused. Most times they're training you for academia, but then it doesn't mean you can't work in industry when you finish your PhD, right? Another thing you need to know is that for most professional doctoral programs, there's rarely any funding. Very few schools might give you tuition support or funding, or you might get some kind of extended external funding, but it's very rare to have a full funding for that kind of program. But in the PhD program, 95 to 98% of the time it's fully funded. They usually have a plan on how you fund. Maybe the first 2 years the school funds you, and then you're assigned to a professor that's where your funding will come from. While there are some schools that do PhD and they'll say, hey, I'll fund you for the first 2 years, but after that you have to write for external grants or based on your research paper, that's how you're going to get funding. So it's very, very broad. And I'm explaining this to you so that you know what you're coming in for and look at your budget and what you're looking out for. So that's what else am I missing about the PhD and doctoral program? So those are key things about it. But the master program is can be research based or coursework based. It depends on your program and your specialty, but most often in the United States, it's quite coursework based. But then when you're graduating, you do a capstone or a thesis, depending on the program. Most times, not so much as a thesis, but some people do a thesis. A thesis can take much more time than a capstone. But most programs, especially professional programs or applied programs, they tend to allow you to do a capstone before you graduate. Now, it's very important to understand what your program is about, and don't just go in because it has a low barrier of entry. Let me give you a personal example. Um, my program is a professional program, the Master of Development Engineering. And so my final deliverable is a capstone. And even though what I opted for involved some kind of research, it is still kind of called a capstone. And so I wanted to apply for a doctoral program, actually a PhD program, in a school in Canada. Let me just be specific. So I give my personal example because it's happened in some other places as well. And they insisted that they wanted you to have completed the masters and have done a thesis in your masters. And I tried to explain to them that the work I'd done in my undergrad for my final year project was thesis grade, like it was kind of a master grade project and it's thesis. But they said no, they wanted my masters to be that. But then someone else had told me you can actually still submit and justify and all of that. But I made up my mind not to because I didn't want to move to Canada yet or on that part, and I didn't think I really wanted that program. It was quite academic focus and research focus, not what I wanted. But I'm saying this because it was a shock to me because initially when I came, I thought that the what was it called now? I thought, hey, I'm getting um the capstone, like, is it not a project? And I really put my whole heart into it, and I thought once you do a master's you can get into any PhD program, but it doesn't work that way. There are some masters that won't take you into the PhD program or a let me say PhD, let me not say doctoral because doctoral is usually flexible. Or let's sorry, not doctoral. The professional doctorate is quite flexible. So you need to know what it is you're getting in for and what the aftermath is as well. So that's the differences between a master and PhD. But the good news is that in the United States, you do not need for most programs, not all. Let me be specific now. For most programs, you do not need a master's to get a PhD. Some people say you don't need it's not all programs. It's not all. Some, yes, but there are most of them that you do not need a master's to get into a PhD program. For the PhD program, or the doctoral program, there are other factors that they'll have to consider: your research experience, program fit, and all of that. And the barrier of entry can be really low. And that's why in this video today, we're going to be talking about choosing the right program. But before you can choose the right program, you need to understand the differences between these two and know which one you want to apply for. Now, when you're trying to decide this, at the first go, don't be so rigid that I want to do a master's, I'm not doing a PhD, or let me even remove the professional doctorate right now out of it because most times it's not funded. It's not fully funded most times, and it can be quite challenging for Africans. And when we get to understanding funding opportunities, I'm going to be explaining that better. But let me just remove the professional doctorate out of it right now and just focus on the PhD. Don't close your mind yet that it has to be a master's or it has to be a PhD. Sometimes, if you want to do something in the somebody if you want to do a PhD program and you think the experience you have in your undergrad it's not sufficient enough to apply, or you're trying to transition into another field, a master's might be something that could bridge the gap to boost your eligibility for that program. So that works. Now, I told you that most PhD programs, almost all are funded, mostly fully funded. Master's programs are not like that. Master's program, yes, people get funding, but you kind of have to fight your way through. You have to find a way. And we're going to be talking about more about that when we get to understanding funding opportunities. Now, when choosing the right program and school, there are some factors you have to consider. For example, when choosing schools, you want to consider the program ranking, the faculty and research areas, the geographical location, and cost of living. Let me explain why I'm saying that. Now, for most, give me a second. Let me open something. I want to be sure. Now, for most graduate programs, actually in the United States, they usually look for a couple of things. For most programs, they're looking for academic excellence. If it's a PhD, they're looking for research experience. If it's a master's, maybe not so much of research experience, but some programs might require some form of experience. It could be internship or volunteer or something. It will help you as well, but some might just be leave it open. But most programs I see, they require maybe a little experience or something. But some, you can just move from your undergrad to graduate to the graduate school. But in the United States, most people already start working at 16. So they've already gathered some experience. But in Africa, or most parts of Africa, it's not exactly like that. You finish secondary school, you go to the university. Most people do not even volunteer, they do not do anything. Their own is just to school, and they might do some volunteering in church, but it don't put it there. It doesn't to them it doesn't count, and so they come out and they are not competitive. So experience is important. For some schools, there's research experience. Some schools are also looking for global experience, right? So there are different kind of experience that are required, but they usually look at experience. Readiness for the program is something they look out for. But what I want to hint is program fits. They're very, very important. You might not get into this program not because you do not qualify. You might over qualify. You might wonder. The reason is that maybe they think what you're saying you want to be or you want to do, they don't have the right professor to guide you or faculty to guide you into doing that. And so you might be declined. It doesn't mean you're not good enough. Now, I'd said you want to look at program ranking and the school you're going. You're coming from Africa. If you do not get, we're going to talk about funding a bit, but if you do not get those kind of funding and those kind of like full funding, some people take loans. You don't want to take a loan that is so much, and then you come here and you go and study one course like that, and you're not able to get a job. That's why even most of the companies that give loans, they are specific on some kind of courses they fund. There are some courses they'll say no, they will not give you loan for it because the potential for return of investment can be really low. And trust me, the money can be a lot. And when you come here, when we look at the visa process, you're going to be seeing, and I'm going to be very transparent with you. It's not that easy to make money as people think. And when you're an international student, you're quite restricted. And then you also have to do your academics. It can be very challenging. People tell you when you come, you find a way. It's not that simple. Some people come and they just drop out and find another way to get away with it, and all of that, or they just fall out of status. It's not that simple. So if you're watching this channel, I believe that you have you have a good mind, or like you have good intention. So you're not just trying to run away, even if you are you it's for the right reasons. So that's why I'm sharing that with you. So you have to look at some factors. Um the geographical location and cost of living as well. If you don't have funding and you don't have support, and you're trying to and you get into Berkeley, and you get a professional program, it it's not easy, because number one, California is very expensive. As expensive as your rent, you're talking about 1,000 something, 2,000 something per month. You don't have funding per month. You talk of food, maybe as a student, you have accommodation. Now, depending on your program, aside your school fees, you pay professional fees. Now, in Berkeley, in for some programs, you might be paying 30 something thousand dollars per semester. But then if you go to some other schools, maybe in Texas, you might see a school where the tuition might be less than $10,000 or about $10,000 a semester. Why do you now want to be in California by force, except you have another ulterior motive and except they give you some good funding? You might say, I will take my money, I will find a way, and I will be here. And when I finish, because I went to Berkeley, they'll give you a job. We realize that those of us that are here realize that it's not as simple as that. If you like, put the Berkeley on top of your resume like that, the job market can be stifled. And when it is like that, everybody is in it, right? Yeah, you can have some chances, but if you might want to find a lower barrier of entry, something that is quite affordable, then when you get in, you can now transition. So geographical location is important. Cost of living is also important. You want to consider it. Now, that's a way to look at it. Now, I'll talk about program ranking. You can narrow down the courses that you want to study. We talked about, okay, let me trace my step back a little. We've talked about the difference between master's and PhD, and I've told you that don't be so niched in that it's master's or PhD. Just have the both in your mind and start looking for programs. Now, you want to know the program you want to study before. Okay, I was talking about choosing the school already. I should have talked about choosing the course first. There are two ways to go about it. You can choose a school first. Then when you choose a school, you go to their website and see their courses and see the one that suits you and you go for that one. Or you can choose a course and begin to look for the schools that offer the course, and then you now start applying for that one. Now, when you choose a course and start looking for schools that offer the course, it can be a little bit very dicey. Now that's what I did, but I was also in a place where if it's not this thing, this course, or this, if it's not this particular way, I'm not going. Like I was fine with staying back in Nigeria, right? But then if you know you're very insistent on it, you might want to go the school route first. And also, I also noticed that there are some courses that might not be called the name that you think it should be called. So when you look at the programs, you open it, you look at it, you might see a course that is called archaeology, and you might feel, "Oh, I don't mean it." But then when you open it, you realize that you can specialize something in like global science there. You can even specialize in public health there, which is rare. So if you narrow it down that okay, I want to be in California, you now look for what are the universities in California, what are the rankings of the school, and then what's the cost of living like. Then look for the programs. When you look at the programs, you now look at what are the funding options available for it, especially if you're particular about funding. If you have a father or parent or trust fund that can pay your funds, you might not need to look at that. But you want to also look at what kind of funding is available, and because it's very important when you're looking at some funding that's available, you'll see that in as much as the deadline for application is December 1st, they will say for you to be considered for this funding, you need to apply before so time. This affected me when I applied to Brandeis. I applied, but I submitted late. And so by the time I submitted, they had already selected those they were going to consider for the World Bank scholarship, which I was going to apply for. So they told me they're so sorry, but that if there's no way for me, they offered me 70% funding, but they said if there's no way I could push it, that um if I defer to, I said, what are the other options? They say if I defer to next year, they could refer me for the World Bank scholarship because they thought I was really a good candidate. But you see, I had submitted late, right? And trust me, even with that 70% funding, I don't think I would have pulled through as it is. It can be, we're going to talk about funding later. So when you're searching for schools, Google can help, but then websites like US News, Grad Cafe, and also the universities, just narrow down universities in Texas, and then you start narrowing. It's a lot of work. You have to sit down, you have to pay attention. Then you can create a list of programs. When you create a list of programs, you can now start eliminating the ones that, let me give you an example. I'm currently applying for my doctoral program. When I started, I had like almost 20 schools on my list. I eliminated it, got to 10. I eliminated it, got to 6. And I'm finally submitting only 2 applications. Here you see. Well, people said the more you submit, the higher chances you can, which is good. But right now, I just have a lot going on. An application can be a lot of work, so I'm just submitting two. But what I'm saying is, you have to sit down and do the work and then do elimination. If you're doing PhD, it's more challenging. Now, let me talk about a bit more about PhD because I'm currently applying for it. Most people tell you you have to reach out to the professor and all. Not all schools require you to do that. Most schools require you to do that. It helps you and it also helps your chances, especially if there's a tie and they have to take one person. If the faculty is already familiar with you, they might take you. But most schools do not require you to do that because the people that make the selections at the admission committee who might not be the faculty. Do you understand? So for me, I just looked at some program fit and had an idea of some professors I wanted to work with. But I honestly do not like the idea that one person is in charge of a decision and I have to start looking for like I didn't have that time to email any professor. So I looked for schools. When I looked for those schools, after I had 15 and I narrowed it to 10, then I narrowed it to eight. Those eight schools by December last year or not this year, something that I started application this year, I emailed all of them telling them my interest and asking what are the options of funding? Number one, I'm African. So what are the options of funding? Also, um, do I need to contact a professor before applying? Do you see that? Out of the eight, only five or so had responded to me, and the rest is history. So the ones I went for said I didn't need to contact professors, and that was why I went with them. But there was one I'm considering. Maybe if I have some time next year and I eventually do not go to any of this, I will apply, but then I will look for a professor or write an email professor because the people that have gotten into that school said they all had to kind of contact a professor first. So you need to know what they're looking for, and sometimes you might not find out on their site. Another thing you can find is on most of these programs they have open day every year or virtual day or something info session. And then you'll find some of them, you find the replay on their site. Sometimes you find replay on their YouTube channel or when you email them, the admission or coordinator or program officer, you can ask, do you have a past info session? I would like to go through it. Can you share the link with me? Right? So that could help you as well have an idea. In the info session, you have all the information, and if possible, some even leave the part where people are asking questions so they can answer whatever questions you might have. So, once you've made the list of programs, you want to see how it's aligning with your career goals and program strengths. I understand there are people who I just want to leave, but trust me, you have to find an alignment. If you do not have some form of alignment and you just want to leave, graduate school is not as simple as it looks. It's not as simple as it looks, and you want it to be worth it. And depending on the kind of funding you have, you might just eventually need to even service. I think service is like $350. It's a lot of money, right? Visa is like almost $200. Like you let it be worth it, right? Find your alignment. And if you want to get funding, they need to be able to feel it from your application that your passion or your connection. And like I said, they're looking for program fit. So find something that is aligned. Find a way to tie where you have been, the experiences you have to what you are now applying for. So that is I think it's gone beyond. There's so much I could go on about choosing the right program. But really, it starts with choosing the right program and the right school. And that's where the work is. I usually tell people if you're going to wait for the next application window that opens in the fall of next year, now start searching for schools. Open a spreadsheet. To this video, I'll attach a file. Um, let me see. I'll try to attach a file or just comment on this video that send me this can I get a downloadable spreadsheet to use to track my application. If you put in comment, I will reply you and send the link to you so that you can download it. I have a spreadsheet that I use to track my applications, and then I have the one that I used when I was doing the elimination to know which one I wanted to go to and make the list, and what the criteria or the decisions that what determined how I was making my decisions. I have a son. Do they support family? What's the diversity like? What are the funding options? There are things I used to make those decisions. So if you want that, put in the comment section that I should send it to you, and I will reach out to you on that. Okay. So with that being said, so put it in the comment section and I'll reach out to you, and then we'll get them from there. So I think that's all I have on choosing the right programs and school, because that's where it starts. So once you have identified your program and school, the next thing I need us to talk about is understanding funding opportunities. It's important you understand that before you even start preparing your application materials. That's personal statements of purpose and all of that. You need to first understand your funding opportunities, because most times what you're requesting for will have to reflect in your application. The kind of funding opportunity that is there will determine how you're going to position yourself, how you want to appear. You need to see in all of these things when you're applying for something. I know most times as human beings, we want to be at the center of it. Me, this is what I want. This is how I want it. But no, it doesn't work like that. You have to think, what is a need for them? How can it be a win-win for us? Right? In as much as you don't play down on your strength and you keep your head high up and you're showing that you're the value, you have to be able to communicate how that is also beneficial for them. Because if they give you funding, there's something they're after for it. So what is it they're after, and do you fit in? When you're applying for the MasterCard stuff, I told people, I said, be careful, don't lie, because most of those questions you're answering, those of those things, they're going to ask you so many questions. For example, if you're applying to Berkeley, your income, they're going to ask you the siblings, where are they, what are they earning, so many things like that. You need to understand the funding opportunities to know how to present yourself. So in the next video in this series, we're going to be talking about understanding funding opportunities, how to fund your graduate education in the United States as an African student. Are you ready? If you really like this series and you're enjoying it, please subscribe to this channel, like this video so more people can see it, and share to those who you think would want to see this. And remember, if you need the sheet, comment, and then I'll reach out to you. So let's go into understanding funding opportunities.